Hi there and welcome to my channel. Dr. Carmen McGuinness here with you. So today, as promised in my midweek sneak peek, we are going to talk about breath work for maintaining calm. I just want to say a few words first in advance of the topic at hand, is that for those of you who perhaps missed my midweek sneak peek and are regular subscribers to my channel, this is a time when we have to kind of shift gears. This is a time when we have to do what is absolutely necessary. And what is necessary, what I am called to do right now, is to help my subscribers and anyone that they send these videos on to, my family, my friends, to remain calm. This is a very, very difficult time. I want to talk just very briefly about my own situation so that everyone knows that I'm not just happily living here alone in the garden. I know I have said before that I'm an introvert and joked about how introverts will inherit the earth. But in reality, I'm a mummy. I'm a mummy of 4 beautiful children, and one of them, my oldest daughter, is pregnant in Washington State, in Snohomish County, where our outbreak started in the U.S. She's 7 months along, and she's not a happy camper right now. So this is a very trying time for me, my family, my close friends who are supporting us through this. And of course, there are clients and friends and all kinds of things that are going on for all of us. So there's a little bit about what's going on in my world, what my most pressing issue is. And I would be very happy if some of you would share your situations in the comment section so that others can read about us. This might be the way that we stay connected right now. This might be the only way that we can actually be together, is to be together in what is troubling us. And certainly, too, we must remain positive. There are very beautiful things happening all around us. And we might not be able to see them all firsthand because we can't go out, we can't do what we normally do. But it's somehow comforting to know that life continues. The birds fly over, the butterflies flitter by, life goes on. So here we are today, ready, with all of that said, ready to talk about using breath work to maintain calm. So I came into breath work actually as a patient. I had been struggling with panic attacks in my very early 30s. I'm 30, 31, and young family, my second husband, 2 children, and you sort of think everything is fine, and then bam, next thing you know, you're in an ambulance, you have an elevated heart rate, you're on your way to an emergency room where a doctor checks you out quite carefully and tells you that you have apparently had a panic attack and refers you to see a mental health provider, something I had never thought about doing at that tender age in my life. I was not a psychologist at that point. I was working on my undergrad in psychology and operating a Montessori school in Southwest Florida. I was a head teacher in a Montessori school. So I found a mental health counselor who provided biofeedback training, and a big part of that was breath. A secondary part of it was visualization, which I will be working on next week with you. That's my plan anyway. Assuming things don't get any weirder than they already are, that will be our topic next week. So breath work with Lindsay, my therapist, I learned that I could completely control my state of sensation, my state of calm, my state of peacefulness, and open my mind and heart to whatever I wanted to in that state of calm. It was quite a realization for me. I really had no idea that people had that sort of power, and as you can well imagine, having had panic attacks, at that point by the time I got to her, I'd been suffering with panic attacks for about 2 months. So it was, life-stopping, really. I couldn't go to work. There wasn't really much I could do. I struggled to interact with my family. It was a bad scene. So having come to that realization and understanding of the power of breath, I went forward with my life, very grateful, carrying on the breathing exercises and the visualization exercises that are so very important to this. And within just a few years, I had an opportunity at my school to host a Buddhist monk who came. Now, I just want to say really quickly here, don't let that turn you off right now, because this is not going to be a religious presentation. In fact, that's one of the things I think that can get in the way. I'm simply giving you my history. So I and my students worked with Wimala, who was a Burmese monk. He had a doctorate in linguistics. Fascinating, very intelligent man, very literate, well-spoken, beautiful individual. And he would come on Tuesdays to my school and teach the children how to breathe so that they could be smarter. That's what he told them. And at that point in my career, I was working with children who were, mostly gifted and high achievers. And I felt like that was a good way of approaching it with them, and it turned out to be. So he worked with them and with me, and I also saw him on Thursday evenings and learned how to breathe. Again, slightly different way, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So that was my 2 early intros to breath work. Now, fast forward to about 2010, so about 10 years ago, 2008 to 10, somewhere in there, I encountered, I now was doing a master's degree in psychology, health psychology in particular, and I encountered a program called Heart Math. The word heart, and then math. One word, uppercase H, uppercase M. I tell you so that you can Google it and learn from them as well if you're interested. And I found that I could become a clinician in this approach to helping people. And so I had to take the coursework and do all that good stuff. Took about, I want to say it was close to a year, and I had to do a study as well, which I did with a young girl. At that point she was probably about 11, who struggled with attention deficit disorder. And I mean struggled in that she really wanted to pay attention. It wasn't a struggle for her teachers so much as it was for her. So she was my case study, and I obviously practiced heart math myself. The wonderful thing about heart math is that you can use the biofeedback equipment quite affordably at home. And another disclaimer, no, I am not holding stock in heart math or selling any of the products. I'm just letting you know that you can get it easily enough. So I incorporated this into my psychology practice when I qualified as a behavior analyst and started seeing private clients. I've used breath work with children with disabilities. I've used it with their parents. I've used it with couples who are struggling to connect. I've used it with individuals who are getting over the breakup of a very bad relationship. I've used it with individuals who are struggling with trauma from their childhood that is new to them. They're only now realizing that there was trauma in their childhood. I've used it with a broad, I don't think I need to go through it all, but a broad variety of clientele, and found it to be tremendously successful. So with that history behind me, and 7 minutes in, please forgive me, I will also timestamp this so that if anybody wants to skip all that, they can. With that behind us, I'm going to get into the actual content here today. So the first thing I want to say, and this alludes back to some of what I already said, is that I think breath work as a way to maintain calm can go wrong in 3 ways. Now I'm going to restate that again. Breath work as a way to maintain calm can go wrong in 3 different ways. Number 1, the instruction can be too complicated. Now, by this, I don't mean that the instructor gets into some of the science of it, because I think that is important. It gives credibility to what we're asking you to do. I'm talking more about practitioners who want to bring meditation right into it from the onset, or perhaps want to bring, as I mentioned earlier, a religious background into it, perhaps mindfulness or Buddhism, when the client is either not ready or not interested. There is absolutely no reason for you to ever have to practice any Buddhist ideology or mindfulness at large to be able to use breath to calm down. They're your lungs. You can do with them what you wish. So, too complicated is the first problem. The second problem, I think, that where breath instruction can go wrong is that it seems too easy to do, so that there's little credibility and no buy-in from the person that the practitioner is teaching. So, again, that refers back to what I was just saying, and that's why I told you a little bit about my background and why I'm going to teach you a little bit about the science as well. And then the third reason I think it can go horribly wrong is that individuals don't use it. They just stop using it. And I want to talk a little bit about how we can stop using it. There's 2 ways, I think. One is that we get better. We calm down. Yep, that's good. I'm calm now, mostly calm now. And we forget how to use it. We forget to use it. The other way, the second one, is that we don't actually want to calm down. And for me, this is the biggest challenge working with clients. If a client doesn't want to calm down, then it's very hard to get them to take that breath. And I want to give you a couple of examples. I know right now, in the midst of the COVID virus outbreak, we all want to calm down. We all want to be calm. But what can go wrong is that once elevated, once we get that adrenaline going, and then later we have the cortisol going as well, we tend to have a higher baseline of elevation, of anxiety. And once you're in that higher baseline of anxiety, you feel on edge and vigilant, like you have to be watchful. And indeed, we do have to be watchful right now. We have to be watchful to wash our hands and take care of business, as we've been taught how to do by watching a lot of videos on YouTube. But we don't have to be vigilant every moment. When we are safe in our own environments, we can be calm. And we mustn't keep those thoughts and those worries racing, or we'll have no break from this. So that's when we have to make ourselves breathe. That's when we have to make ourselves do what I'm about to teach you how to do. So the first thing I want to tell you a little bit about is how breath actually works to calm us down. It's a very simple but highly technical thing. Simple to understand, but technical within the body. So there's a tiny little node on the lung, and that node is called the sinoatrial node. It's right about here. And that node actually talks to the brain and the heart. So when we take a breath, we are sending a message to the heart to slow the rate, and we're sending a message to the brain that everything is okay. I just took a breath. So breathing is tremendously powerful because of this tiny little node, and this node is about the size of the head of a sharpened pencil. So it's very, very tiny. So there's that. Now let's talk a little bit about what happens if we don't take that breath. Let's just use something other than COVID to describe this, something that we all have in our wheelhouse, because Lord knows we don't have this in our wheelhouse. Something like you're driving. This is a good one. I've used this in classes before. You're driving and someone cuts you off, and your first impulse is, right? I'm going to have a crash. And then you apply the brake and you don't have a crash. Hopefully there was no squealing of brakes. You don't have that crash, but your heart rate is elevated and everything is kind of going. And the way that the body responds to that is to drop a wee bit of adrenaline. Now, adrenaline, this is important to what I'm going to say next. Adrenaline is produced from the pituitary gland. That's where it's made. And there's only a tiny wee little bit of it to go around in your body at any given time. So once it drops that, it has to get busy making more adrenaline, and that can take a while. So you have the half-life of adrenaline is about 2, 3, 4 minutes. So you have a couple of minutes to calm down, reclaim yourself, or run, or flip the other guy off and stay agitated. Many of us, I actually don't think I ever have, but a lot of people do that and decide to ruin their day. And I want to tell you how it ruins their day. It ruins their day because once that adrenaline is gone, once we have determined that this is not an emergency and we're out of adrenaline, we begin to calm down. Or if we haven't determined that it's not an emergency and that we're going to stay really elevated and upset about it and keep ourselves on edge, then something else comes on board, and that something else is cortisol. And the half-life of cortisol is much longer than adrenaline, and there's a whole lot of it to go around. So if we get upset and stay upset for longer than the life of adrenaline, say 6 minutes maybe, we begin to release cortisol so that the body can again decide to run or fight or do whatever it is that we need to do to keep ourselves safe. So I just want to break here very quickly to say this is an evolutionarily based process and system. It was developed, clearly, if you can use the word developed, because I don't want to get religious here, so I don't want to talk about a God that made us to be like this, but it evolved, let's say that, during a very different time, a time when we might have to run from God only knows what was happening back then when we were in the savannah and things were really bad. Worse than today even. So, we're still stuck with it. The body changes slowly, and here we are with this old system, and it still might be sort of useful, but it would be nice if we had the awareness of how to intervene in it, and that's what we're talking about today, because breath stomps the process. The sinoatrial node gets a message from the lung that is breathing deeply and sends it to the heart to slow the heart rate, and to the brain that I'm okay, all's good here. So, that's the scientific background. Just opening my notes again. So, the words I want to say here what's done is done. Now, I know what's done and not done with the COVID outbreak. We have to wait and see what happens next. But we are not the ones who have to maintain vigilance in that. We just need to take care of business, do what needs to be done, do what is recommended, lay in some food, sanitize when you get home, wash your hands, etc. What's gonna happen is gonna happen. We have very little control over that. What we do have control over is all the things I just mentioned. Staying safe, making sure there's food in the house for the next little bit. But what's now is your moment. And this is your moment to either be on edge or calm. And believe me, right now, you need to be calm. Calm is your point of power. Right now is your point of power. There might not be a lot that we have control over in the world today, but we have control over right now, this moment in time, our space. So what do? How is it actually done? So now what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these amazing breaths. And before we start, I just need to let you know that we're looking at maybe taking 1 to 3, depending upon how good you are at it. Now, my instructors told me at HeartMath that I could breathe for the U.S. in the Olympics, and I later became a yoga teacher. I forgot to mention that part. I was also a yoga teacher. So I also taught prana, which is breath. So, okay, totally forgot that part. But anyway, there you go. So there's 4 points of breath for me. So I'm not going to just take 1 breath here to calm things down. I'm going to take 3. And when I do take the 3, I'm going to take 3 because I think you need to take 3 until you get good enough at this. And then you'll find that you feel better after just 1. Before I start, I do want to let you know that when you first start doing this, you might feel a little lightheaded when you do it because there's a lot of oxygen going to the brain. Later, you will experience that sensation. It's the same thing happening, but you'll experience it in a different way. You'll experience it as spaciousness. You'll experience it as if you were expanding from within, as if you were giving your internal world more air, which is, by the way, exactly what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to talk about it before I start doing it so that you can, because I take a very deep and long breath. So I'm going to go quiet here. You'll hear my neighborhood happening behind me, but you won't hear me talking. So what I'm doing is I'm breathing in through the nose, and I'm exhaling through pursed lips. Now, the reason for using pursed lips to exhale is to slow the exhalation. So that's what's going to happen there. And I'm going to do that 3 times. So this is going to be a little minute here. So here goes. So that's what I have for you today. I hope this has been helpful. As mentioned at the beginning, next week we will be talking about visualization, using visualization to maintain calm. I feel that this is an especially important thing for people who are in cities and stuck inside. I'm very fortunate that I have a big garden and I can come outside and kind of get away from it all in privacy, maintaining social distancing, but some people can't. A large portion of the population cannot do that. So we will be talking about that, about using visualization to maintain calm. And indeed, even I have been using it despite my garden. I've many evenings to get to sleep found myself on a beach, imagining the waves lapping my toes and the warmth of the sand and the sun. And speaking of sun, I think using visualization to bring UV rays to our bodies is quite a useful thing right now. So that'll be next week. And then the week after that, we will be talking about using progressive muscle relaxation to maintain calm, using it to bring you into a state of sleep or just a state of calm without actually going to sleep. So that's my next two segments, and more on each of those when we get to our midweek sneak peeks in between. I thank you so very much for joining me today. I wish you absolute love and joy and health and warmth and sunlight and peace. And I will see you soon.